The classroom, despite its limitations, can be of benefit when it is full of optimal input for acquisition. Being in touch with spoken languages provide lots of opportunities to learn colloquial phrases or real language that not commonly teach in a second language classroom. Conversation is an output acquisition. However, it is a good way to obtain input. When someone speaks to someone else, encourages input, since the person who speaks with generates a conversation with which acquire input by listening. This is the most important characteristic. We must be sure that the acquirer understands what we try to teach. Otherwise, he or she will be just listening utterances with no sense, and there won't be acquisition. A good teacher can make input comprehensible to a non-native speaker. As teachers, we must be assured the input is comprehensible for the adult to make his or her acquisition qualified, even though he or she could be a less competent speaker, providing him or her input that the outside world cannot or will not do. Comprehension is a necessary condition for language acquisition. Input is the primary causative variable in the second language acquisition. When creating materials, we must be careful that they are eye-catching, so that acquirers do not even notice that the message is encoded in a foreign language, making his or her input easy to understand. Taking into consideration that acquirers have different interests, goals, and backgrounds. We need to consider that when input is comprehensible, current commitments will be in most cases presented automatically. A grammatical focus will usually prevent real communication using the second language. So, we shouldn't attempt to teach along the natural or any other order when our goal is acquisition. With a grammatical syllables, structures are presented only once, so not all students are at the same stage due to different circumstances, such if a student is absent or not paying attention or simply do not have the input. Grammatical syllables assumes the order of acquisition, and this assumption is not necessary when rely on comprehensible input. It is difficult to say which is the correct quantity to achieve a good level in second language acquisition, since there is not enough data to be more precise. Asher gives some data about TPR method. In this method, students are able to start production in the target language after about 10 hours. There is even less information about the amount of comprehensible input necessary to reach higher levels of competence. So, as teachers, we will be able to stimulate second language acquisition if we put greater focus on input. Using enough instruction time for supplying comprehensible input, always keeping in mind to give the best of us. We need to find out interesting topics so students feel self-confident, and as a consequence, the acquisition will be as expected. About the production, the best is not force it and let the student decide when to start talking. A sure method of raising the filter is attempting to correct errors, especially in beginning stages. Those acquirers whose attitude are not optimal for second language acquisition have a high or strong affective filter. Even if they understand the message, the input will not reach the part of the brain responsible of second language acquisition. Those with attitudes more conducive to second language acquisition obtain more input, have a lower or weaker affective filter. Responsibility as teachers is to ensure that the students have the necessary tools to develop in and out of a classroom with fluency and self-confidence, not only focusing in linguistic competence but also and mainly on communication. With this in mind, students will be able to initiate and maintain conversation. Even if there is something the students don't understand, they will be able to change the subject to something more familiar or easy to understand in order to continue the conversation. It is expected that a correct and well-conducted instruction has been given to the students at the end of any course, with the main purpose that they will be able to develop progress and continue acquiring current competence without the professor's support.